5 Live Formula One.
A very good afternoon to you as we welcome you to Sao Paulo. It's Interlagos and it's round 21 of the Formula One World Championship. Just 1 point separates championship leader Lando Norris from teammate Oscar Piastri, and Max Verstappen still fighting to keep himself in it, 36 points adrift in third. Add into the mix a sprint weekend and we're set up for hopefully another excellent weekend's worth of racing. That also means just one practice session which is about to get underway in a few minutes time, although it has been delayed. We're not entirely sure as to the reason just yet, but hopefully it won't be too long before we get the green light on. It wouldn't come on until 1:30 anyway, but we'll guide you through all of the action when they do get out onto the track and catch you up as well with the very latest news from the paddock and beyond. And to do that alongside myself, Harry Benjamin, is the BBC's F1 correspondent Andrew Benson, and reigning F1 Academy champion Abby Pulling returns. How are you, Abby? Nice to have you back.
I'm good, thank you. Nice to be back.
Good one to come back for as well, Interlagos. It's one of the, there's quite a few sort of driver favourite tracks, aren't there, throughout the year, but this one's got the heritage, the prestige, and you can actually have some pretty epic racing here. Yeah,
I always look forward to watching the Sao Paulo and Brazilian Grand Prix. It's always an exciting one with the weather, and as you say, the track, it's got some elevation change, it's fast, it's got some hairpins, it's all very flowing, but especially this weekend because of how the championship fight is turning out. It's getting ever closer to the end, and it's getting ever so tight as well.
Andrew, where does Interlagos rank on your list of circuits?
It's a fantastically atmospheric place to go, and it kind of epitomises the city that it's in. Sao Paulo is a sort of atmospheric, edgy kind of place. You've got to be careful which way you turn when you're leaving your hotel sometimes. You go one way, you'll get mugged, the other way you'll find a nice shopping centre. It's that kind of place, and Interlagos has that kind of edge to it. There's a lot of drama encapsulated within its history, and it's a bit like Monza, you can kind of feel that there. It's in a natural amphitheatre. The weather is often very changeable, as we saw last year with Max Verstappen's fantastic victory from 17th on the grid, and we're seeing a weather forecast from Formula One saying there's a moderate to high chance of wet and windy conditions on Saturday and Sunday, so that always brings drama. So it's not a place you go for a holiday, but it's certainly a place you go for an experience.
I'm going to Brazil for Christmas.
Well, you're not going to Interlagos, are you?
No, I'm not.
Some fancy beach island, presumably.
I could neither confirm nor deny. It's quite windy, actually, just seeing some of the flags in the grandstands really waving in the breeze, and as you'd expect, absolutely packed out as well, particularly so for this year, because for the first time since 2017, there is a Brazilian driver on the grid, Abby. Gabriel Bortoleto, home race for him, and that's going to bring a lot of pressure with it as well.
I mean, it must be incredibly special for him. It's such a place to have a home crowd, and they're following him all around the world, of course, and supporting him at every race weekend. But this is a really special one. It's been a while since the Brazilian fans has had someone to cheer on. Of course, he's got the likes of Ayrton Senna, who has been very iconic, and so on. But they've been starved a little bit. So yeah, nice to have Gabriel Bortoleto racing for them, but it is a lot of pressure. Your home race, you want to perform. He's obviously not in a front-running car, although this race weekend we know we've seen Alpine on the podium, double podium here, so you never really know what you're going to get around this circuit.
Yes, you can get absolute chaos, but I'm not sure even chaos will help Alpine get onto the podium come Sunday afternoon. But hey, stranger things have happened in Formula One. Just getting a couple of looks at the track, still being delayed, but the session is going to start at 11:35 local time, so 2:35 UK time. So just the 5 additional minutes before we get started then. Looks like they were just having to clear up a few bits of the track there and get the marshals off safely, and then the safety car doing its final checks and run around this circuit. So important though, just one session before we get properly into it. And the stakes, Abby, are high, just a point between our two championship protagonists, and they've got a man with a wealth of experience when it comes to winning titles as well, with an outside shot, but still very much a chance in Max Verstappen.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an upwards hill for Max. He's had a few places where he's lost points in the past this year. I mean, so have the two McLarens, but I mean, he's got to outscore them by 9 points every race weekend going forward, which is going to be a tall task, but also with how they keep tripping over each other at McLaren, not impossible.
He's gained 68 points in the last 6 races, has Max Verstappen. He was 104 points adrift from the championship lead after the summer break, so it just goes to show how much he has clawed his way back into this title fight, Andrew.
Yes, so just an update on the delay, 5 minutes, as you said, Harry. It's because of general track cleaning. The FIA have finally deigned to tell us what the reason was. But yes, it's poised very finely, isn't it? You know, it only takes one big result for Verstappen and a difficult race for McLaren, which is, you know, they've not had that many difficult races this year, McLaren, as a team. Okay, they had Baku. I suppose you could say that was their one, but maybe you could also say that the odds suggest that they're due another one. So one race that he wins and they both struggle in, then the championship's wide open. As Abby says, it is an uphill task, but what's been interesting in the last couple of races is how confident Verstappen's been sounding. He did his news conference yesterday, and I'll see if I can find the quotes for you, because it was quite interesting how bullish he was about things.
Well, you find the quotes, and we're just getting a wonderful view of someone zip wiring across the Interlagos track and into the fan zone area. Would you do a bit of a zip line? Would you, Abby?
No, that could not be me.
No, I'm racing driver. You're all about adrenaline.
I know I'm the opposite of an adrenaline junkie when it comes to stuff like that.
Really? You wouldn't fancy a zip line, or, you know, sort of free climbing or anything like that? Sort of those kind of extreme sports.
I think as well, just with so many people watching in that scenario, like, I'd definitely do something embarrassing and fall over in some way or shape or form.
Well, the 3 minutes counting down before we get the first practice session, and one and only practice session, underway. Have we done enough filling, Mr. Benson?
You have indeed, yes. So, I mean, it was quite interesting 2 races ago when he was on that run of 3 wins in a row, whatever it was, in Austin. He was, you know, he basically said the championship's on, which was a big change for him, because until then he was just saying race at one race at a time, one race at a time, like everybody tends to do when they're a sports person and going for some kind of championship, as I'm sure Abby is well aware. I'm sure I heard you say that a lot last year during the academy season, Abby. But Verstappen, so this is what he said yesterday. He was talking about, you know, we need to be faster than them, but if you would give me the 2023 season with how everything was, and you tell me I'm 30...
Yeah, we're actually 2 minutes away from starting. Delayed this first practice session because the track just needed a bit more cleaning, so that's still being done. But only one practice session as it's a sprint weekend before we go qualifying for the sprint. And indeed, just a point separating championship leader Lando Norris and his teammate Oscar Piastri. But Max Verstappen is still fighting to keep himself in it. He needs a bit of a slice of luck, though, to claw some more points away. But with weather in the air across the weekend, plus his strength when it comes to sprint races, he could cause some trouble. Apologies, Andrew, interrupted by dear old 5 Live Sport there. Carry on.
Right, yeah, I heard them talking in my ear, which is why I suddenly stopped talking, everybody, if anyone who's listening. So he said, if you give me 2023 season with how everything was, he's talking about their level of dominance then, of course, and you tell me I'm 36 points behind with 4 races to go, I'm like, yeah, no problem, easy. This season, of course, has been a little bit different. It comes down to us optimising everything and nailing the weekend. And besides that, probably we need a little bit of luck on one round to create a bigger offset. But we're going to give it our all. And if that's going to be good enough at the end of the year, I don't know. On one level, you can say that's very matter of fact. In another way, there was a kind of lightness and confidence to the way he was expressing himself. I mean, he is a confident person, obviously. But it really resonated with me, the way he was talking yesterday.
I think Max just has to do what Max does best, which is being consistent and make the most out of every single opportunity. He's annoyingly good for his competitors. Any situation that's thrown at him, he always gets the maximum out of what was achievable. And, you know, it's his superpower in a sense. Whereas the McLarens, they make mistakes and they do throw points away unnecessarily. And I think that will be their downfall. And I'm sure they would have had a conversation internally to have discussed this, because they're at a point where they can't afford to throw points away willy-nilly, because Max is hot on their tail. He will take any opportunity he can, and he doesn't really have anything to lose. He can throw something risky at the inside, and he knows that the two McLarens have a lot more to lose and will probably be a bit more. I mean, the saying goes, when Max is behind, you always know he's going to come past.
Yeah, and I think the thing is that they know that power of Verstappen. You know, McLaren have been talking about it all year. They know he's this kind of relentless, sort of almost irresistible force. And that's going to weigh on your mind, especially when you go for your first championship. He's won 4 already. You know, if he doesn't win this one, so what? You know, it's kind of his attitude. I mean, to be fair, that was kind of the attitude he projected through 2021. Not sure whether that was real or not, but that's what he said. He was like, "Oh, it's not going to change my life," but it really isn't going to change his life this time. But it would go down, paradoxically, as probably his greatest championship if he won it. So it's all, from his point of view, as Abby says, there's no negatives. You just go for it, see what happens. Whereas Piastri and Norris, they've been leading one or the other all season. McLaren have dominated the Constructors' Championship. They won it with 5 races to go, I think it was, or was it 6? You know, they've been by far the superior team, because partly they've got 2 good drivers in the best car on average. But for him to deliver a drivers' championship in that scenario, it would go down alongside the likes of Alain Prost in 1986, getting between the 2 Williams drivers, Nigel Mansell and Nelson Piquet, as one of those all-time great championship wins.
Well, also, Zach Brown has been speaking in the build-up. I think it was on Tom Clarkson's Beyond the Grid podcast, and with Andrea Stella, and they were talking about, you know, the philosophy of fairness. As, by the way, we've got cars now heading out onto the track after our delay. It's 58 minutes and 19, 18, 17, 16 seconds remain of free practice one as they all slowly creep out of the pit lane. Zach Brown essentially said, you know, he would rather have what happened in 2007 happen here, which was here in Interlagos, where Kimi Raikkonen took the title away from the squabbling McLaren duo of Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton, which I found quite amazing.
Well, it's not that amazing, because the McLaren have been saying it all year. I mean, if you remember when I did the interview with Piastri in Monaco, I said, isn't there a risk with you having equal treatment with Norris that Verstappen's going to drive through the middle of you and win the championship? And he was like, well, yes, but we'd rather both have our best opportunity than any other scenario. So Brown's just repeating what they've been saying internally from the very beginning and externally as well. But it's a very different scenario from 2007. What was happening in 2007 was Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso were McLaren teammates, and their battle absolutely tore the team apart, almost to the point of shattering it completely. You know, it was seismic stuff. I won't go into all the details now. Whereas this is all harmony at McLaren. But yes, what happened was somehow McLaren contrived to lose the championship when they had Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso driving their cars. Albeit Ferrari had the best car, I think you can say, on average now. But even that required, in the final race of the season, Ferrari to sort of manipulate their drivers. Massa was leading, Raikkonen was second. They needed Raikkonen to win the race, to win the championship, because Alonso was third, and Hamilton had some reliability problems during the race and recovered back after dropping down the field up to 7th, which wasn't enough to win in the championship. They needed Raikkonen to win with Alonso third to stop Alonso or Hamilton winning, and they swapped the order at the pit stops. Of course, it might get to that with McLaren this year if they end up in a 3-way fight with Verstappen at the final race, but that's not where they are right now. They're in a harmonious situation. The uniqueness of the way they're running this season is that they have done something that no one has done before in the history of Formula One, which is to have 2 teammates in one team competing for the championship without falling out so far. Yeah, exactly. But it is what they're trying to achieve, and you know, it's been fantastic to watch them, allow them both to have that opportunity, even if there's been a bit of sort of fiddling around the edges on the way.
Abby, if you were one of the McLaren drivers and that was the ethos of your team, and your boss has just reaffirmed that, you know, they will always stand for both drivers being treated fair in the utmost possible way, even if that means one of or both of you missing out on a drivers' championship, how would you be feeling as a part of that team?
I see both sides of it, and for me personally, I would like that the team are giving equal opportunity. I think I would like to think I would have every opportunity that my teammate would to be able to win, and if I wasn't to be the one that won, I wouldn't be the better one that year. It doesn't mean you can't come back, you know, if the team's still competitive the following year and so on and so forth. But I think they have to give each other equal opportunity, and they can't be seen to favour one or the other. I think internally as well as in the media and publicly, it just wouldn't be fair to be favouring one or the other at this point. Of course, we know that Lando has a much longer relationship with the team, and in the past has been favoured, but Oscar's really took a step up this year, and he's shown, actually, I'm not a number 2 driver, I'm here to be competing for world titles too. And I think I really have a lot of respect for him as well, sticking to his kind of gut and putting it to the team like, no, I'm here to win races as well.
Yeah, not afraid to get his elbows out. Piastri currently tops the times, by the way. Everyone out on the hard tyre, and it's a 1:12.169, which is currently the fastest, held by the Australian in that McLaren. This is the sound of Lewis Hamilton's first lap being completed. Can't quite pip Piastri in these early stages. 2 tenths behind him, though. Hamilton slots into second. Then it's Alonso, Norris and Russell, the top 5. Behrman is 6th ahead of Sainz. Verstappen, Leclerc and Gasly, the top 10. With Stroll, Albon, Hadjar, Ocon and Colapinto, the top 15. Antonelli, Lawson, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg and Bortoletto, the 20 drivers who are all out there on the track and getting dialed in with every lap that goes by. Abby, I'm curious to know that some of the struggles that Oscar Piastri's had in the last couple of races seem to be equated, at least publicly, in what we're able to pick up with whether a track is particularly low grip or not. And when there isn't any grip, he seems to suddenly struggle and be off the pace. We've got a yellow flag, and it is the Red Bull of Yuki Tsunoda, who I think has made contact with the wall. He has done. It's on the exit of 4, and he limps back onto the circuit, but his tyres look a little worse for wear. He's still got his front wing intact, but there was certainly some carbon fibre near the wall. We're about to see a replay of it coming through the centre S's, through the left-hand curve as he heads down the Retto Aposta, down towards turn 4. Let's see what happens here. Slams onto the brakes, turns it into the left-hander, and then gets onto the curbs, and then it just upsets the car, and he slides backwards into the wall, makes contact with the wall with the front left tyre, shaves off a bit of the front wing end plate, and a bizarre early incident. Did that? Yeah, and then it spun him back round, made contact with the rear as well, but gets away with that one, Abby.
I was going to say, I think he's gotten off quite lightly with that. I mean, it's going to probably put a bit of a damper to his FP1 session. This is a session, especially for Yuki, you want as much time as possible in the car before sprint qualifying. But what seems to have happened is, because they only have one free practice session, Red Bull are risking it running low as possible, maybe putting more risk on Yuki's car maybe than Max's, who knows. And he's just bottomed out on the exit of T4, had a bit of a tank slapper, as we call it, and yeah, span round. I think it seems they were taking a risk and running quite low, or the curb may have changed from last year. Maybe just unexpectedly took Yuki off guard.
Yeah, we've had a bit of resurfacing between turn 3 and turn 4, basically the straights, so that curve down the Retto Aposta between turn 3 and 4, and then all the way from turn 12 Zhengzhou all the way up to the first of the centre S's, but not the ideal start for Yuki Tsunoda, who we thought the decision may well have been made behind closed doors about his future, but the rumblings suggest they're giving him another couple of races before, if we are to believe the rumours, Isaac Hadjar gets the call up for next year. Still unconfirmed to all of us mere mortals. Max Verstappen put on the soft tyre and went second fastest with a 10th, but I'm not sure that was on the soft if he's just set that lap time, because we're looking at him and he's got the white-walled hard tyre on. So I don't know, that might be an issue with the graphic there, because he's a 10th off George Russell, who is now fastest with a 1:11.861. Just to finish off my point about Oscar Piastri, and I suppose it's a wider point for drivers when sometimes they say, I have to adapt to a car, you've got to change your driving style. How do you even begin to do that as a driver?
It is really hard, because each driver have their own tendencies, what they do and don't like, and what comes more natural to them, whether it's a certain application of the brake or the throttle, or even your initial steering input. It's all linked, and you kind of put all the pieces together, which is the end result of how you can ultimately make the car feel yourself as well. Drivers always chase setup, especially in the junior formulas. You can chase setup and keep chasing it, but actually you've got a lot more tools at your disposal with the inputs that you put in, and he's obviously got this certain driving style that just isn't quite fitting with the lower grip and the car at this point in time, whereas it's kind of flipped on its head. Whereas that was Lando at the start of the season, they made a few changes, and actually now he's reveling in it, and it's working for him, and it's not so much for Oscar, but they would have kept them changes I think more solely to Lando, and Oscar would have gone his own direction a little bit, and it just takes a bit of time on the simulator to play with them things, because the simulator, of course, you're developing as much as possible with the car, but you're also working on yourself at the end of the day.
One of the things that's interesting about it is that it's not like there've been no low grip circuits before Mexico and Austin, so Monza's quite a low grip circuit, for example, and you've got Melbourne is quite a low grip circuit.
Brakes are very, very grabby. Feels very strange. Copy that.
Alex Albon's not happy with the braking performance of his Williams at the moment, and yet it just seemed to go a bit wrong for him those 2 weekends. And you're absolutely right, Harry. Andreas Della, the McLaren team principal, was talking about it with regards to particular driving style that was required of the car when it's sliding on those kind of low grip surfaces when the tyres are hot, which the combination of those multiple factors, I just can't quite get my head around it. And from listening to Piastri talk, it doesn't sound like he really gets it either. He's obviously spent some time between Mexico and Brazil in the factory trying to understand it, but even yesterday when he was talking to the media, he was saying that on one level he was saying there was an explanation, on another level he was saying he didn't really get it. So we'll have to see what happens over the next 4 races. One of the questions that I've got in my mind, which I'm not even sure there is an answer to, is that it's intrigued me that if you remember back in the first half of the year, Lando Norris was complaining about a numbness from the front axle, which was to do with the innovative anti-dive and anti-lift front and rear suspension that they put on the car for this year, which has been a lot of the explanation for why they've been so competitive. And he was struggling to feel the car when he was really pushing it to the limit on a qualifying lap. And to try and address that, they made a small change to the suspension geometry, sort of on the outboard section where the top wishbone joins the wheel. I don't know the exact details, but it was all to do with giving Norris more feel. Now, from that point onwards, he's definitely been on an upward trend. Not always beating Piastri, but generally on an upward trend. And the balance of performance between the two of them from that point is much more strongly in Norris's favour than when it was very strongly in Piastri's favour before that. Piastri did not adopt that suspension change because they didn't regard it as an upgrade. They regarded it as a sort of tuning of the car that was very much driver specific. But I just wonder whether, had Piastri done that, would he still be having this problem with feel on low grip circuits or not?
It's a great question, and it's one that we did speak about as well over the course of those Mexico and Austin weekends. But Piastri's gone fastest in the middle sector and puts himself up into second on the hard tyre behind George Russell, as we get a look at what happened to Max Verstappen going down into turn 4, slams on the brakes into the left-hander. This is where his teammate found the wall, having bottomed out on the exit curb, and very, very nearly the same fate, Abby, for Max Verstappen, but he managed to save it.
It was literally the most identical you could get. Max saved it and kept it going round, whereas Yuki literally spun round. So it's just showing, I think, the experience and the confidence that Max has a little bit there. But it's I don't know, it's taking these risks in the first 15 minutes of FP1. It just goes to show that they really want to hit the ground running, and they're taking the risks necessary to try and maximise the weekend.
Certainly are. 45 minutes and 53, 52, 51, 50 seconds remain. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari is just about to come across the line and finish a lap. Let's see where this puts the Monegasque, who got engaged this week. He puts himself up into second, 4/10 adrift though of George Russell with a 1:11.188, holds the fastest lap.
And just to expand on this point Abby was making about the Red Bull on the curbs and running it low, is these cars have underfloor aerodynamics with using something called Venturi tunnels, and basically the lower you can get them to the ground, basically the faster they go, the more downforce they have. So but the teams can't run them absolutely as low as they want, ideally, because quite often that will mean that they're damaging the floor too much, and that will end up wearing the floor too much, which means that you could get to the end of the race and be disqualified, as Ferrari were in China, if people remember that. Now, so what happens in practice generally is that the teams sort of start at a lower point, the one that they think they might be able to get away with, and then they'll assess how the car, where the floor of the car and the particular mounting points, which are the key things when it comes to the regulations, how they're wearing through that session or those sessions if it's a normal weekend. And then they make a calculation of how low they can get away with running the car for qualifying and the Grand Prix. The difficulty here for the teams is they've got two sets of decisions of that to make. They've got one session to work out what they can get away with for sprint qualifying and the sprint, which of course is only the third length of the Grand Prix, and then they've got the information from the sprint to then apply for the next qualifying session and the Grand Prix itself. And you may well find that the teams run the cars lower in the sprint than they can get away with in the Grand Prix, because it's not as long as the Grand Prix, so the car's not going to get as damaged as it is.
Man, what are these idiots doing, honestly?
Well, that was Kimi Antonelli, who was on a quick lap coming out of turn 5 on the short blast down towards the right-hander of 6. There was a Ferrari to his left, and then on the racing line going quite slowly was Oliver Behrman's Haas, and just about did Kimi Antonelli manage to weave his way through the middle, but ruined his lap, slowed down, and made sure to let Behrman know that Antonelli was not happy with that one.
I never quite understand when the drivers are slowing down, they go to each side of the circuit, because then you're not leaving any space at all for a faster car approaching. So in that scenario, I don't know if there was too much Behrman could have done. I think Hamilton needed to back off a bit more or go past Ollie, or I mean Behrman could have sped up a little bit, but it was hard really. There wasn't really much Ollie could have done there, although he's obviously gesticulating at Oliver. But yeah, that's really frustrating for Kimi, especially for all the rookies this weekend. It will be their first time racing around this circuit. Maybe Gabrielli might have at some point in his junior career, but a lot of them won't have experienced this Interlagos circuit before, so they're going to have to get to grips with it really quick, especially on a sprint weekend. It's really hard for a rookie. They've got to one session to get on with it and then straight into qualifying. Yeah, it's not on the F2 or the F3 calendar, so it's a tough one for the rookies. Bortoleto, I think, has only driven here once in a GT car, I think he was saying, in the build-up to this weekend. So he doesn't actually have, again, an advantage in that sense. There was a great clip that I saw of him on a podcast with Max Verstappen and Nelson Piquet Jr. and a couple of other Brazilians, where they sort of throw back to last week, 2 weeks ago in Mexico. And Max Verstappen and Gabriel Bortoleto, they get on very well. And they were having dinner the night before the Grand Prix. And Gabriel Bortoleto was saying he was desperate to start on the soft tyre for the race because he wanted to pick off places right from the start, be really aggressive. And Verstappen said, don't do that, start on the medium. and then Bortoleto suddenly changed his mind, and then they start the grid and everybody is pretty much on the soft with the exception of Max Verstappen and Gabi Bortoleto. And Verstappen said, I'm feeling a little bit, either we've pulled an absolute blinder here or we're in trouble. And in the end it worked out for both of them, because Verstappen got on the podium, just missed out on second, and Bortoleto kind of quietly snuck a point. And I feel like that kind of sums up his season a little bit. Quietly impressive. He's done a really good job, especially in qualifying. He's beaten Hülkenberg, his teammate, over the season so far, and that's not an easy task. Hülkenberg's not like a top-level driver in the context of Hamilton and Leclerc and Russell and so on, but he's a very, very, very competent and experienced driver. So to come in as a rookie and beat him in qualifying on a head-to-head in your first season is very impressive. And as the season's gone on, he's got more and more effective in the races as well. So I think everybody recognises that he's got a
a lot of potential to have a very strong future. But I think you could say the same about a lot of the rookies this year. You know, Ollie Behrman had a great result in Mexico last time out, 4th place in the Haas. He's also beating Esteban Ocon on qualifying over the season. Isaac Hadjar, as we know, is probably almost certainly going to get the second Red Bull seat. And of course, although Kimi Antonelli's had a slightly shaky season alongside George Russell in the Mercedes, at the same time, George Russell is probably the hardest of the teammates of the rookies to get on par with. So even he's another one who's got I think he's got a lot more to prove, but he's shown potential in flashes, small flashes admittedly. So it's been a strong year for the rookies. I just want to go back to that Red Bull incident, the 2 Red Bull incidents I should say. As Abby says, they were almost identical, and yet the difference in what happened was absolutely dramatic. Verstappen just got a little flick of oversteer, caught it almost before it had happened and went on his way, whereas Tsunoda's flick of oversteer became a very large one, a tank slapper as you say, and then a spin and then a crash into the barriers, albeit with not very much damage. And it just goes to show just that those 2 incidents are, they just of themselves, they show the difference in talent and skill between Verstappen and Tsunoda, or a driver of Verstappen's level and a driver of Tsunoda's level.
I mean, I will add to that. You don't know if they're running 100% the same. Of course, the 2 want to get as much data as possible. Maybe they're running different one car to the other, so it would then make it harder for one or the other to catch it, especially when you bottom out at that kind of speed. You do become a massive passenger, and it was very unforgiving for Yuki for sure. But yeah, it also goes to show that if they are running identical, the caliper that Max is, he's able to have his fast hands and catch things like that, and he almost predicted that it was going to happen, I think.
Well, Tsunoda hasn't actually re-emerged from the pit lane since that incident. Only 4 laps to his name so far. He
did hit the front axle actually, so I wouldn't be surprised if it's bent a wishbone or there's something on the front suspension that's not quite aligned. It was not just a graze of the barrier, it was enough to make an impact.
Gasly on the radio. I don't know why the car feels more alive today than any other day for the past months. Gasly's currently up in 4th, by the way. He's up in the pits. He's just over 3.5 tenths back from George Russell. So majority of cars in the pits at the moment. Should say, while we were on the rookies, coming into practice, Alpine have announced that Franco Colapinto will stay with the team for next year. So it will be Colapinto and Gasly for 2026. How do you react to that, Abby?
I think it was kind of expected, to be honest. I do think it's a shame that they've given that opportunity to the likes of Franco when he's not had a too dissimilar run to what Jack Doohan had. I still don't see why they made that kind of decision, and it's sad to see, but I'm glad that they're at least committing to someone and they're not constant. It's not a revolving door, that second seat.
I mean, it's no secret that Colapinto brings a lot more commercial value than Jack Doohan does, but I also think, okay, Colapinto, I don't think we're putting him up there with the ilk of Verstappen. However, 2026 will be his first full season where he gets a full run-up as well, with pre-season testing. Next year we'll really see what Colapinto's got.
I think this is going to sound harsh, right? But
Benson being harsh?
I've been around a while, and you see it straight away with Formula One drivers. They come in their first year, they might not do it all the time, but they just, you can tell when they're going to be special. And I haven't seen anything from Colapinto that says he's going to be special. I mean, Alpine are in a difficult place. They didn't really want to keep Colapinto. They were looking at Bottas for a while, but they came a bit late to Bottas, and he was already a long way down the line with his Cadillac deal. He's obviously coming back to Formula One next year with Sergio Perez at Cadillac, which is the new team on the grid next year. So Alpine were kind of left with no choices, really. They were looking at Alex Dunn for a while, but then the whole McLaren, Alex Dunn's relationship, he's a Formula 2 driver from Ireland who's looked very promising this year in F2. His relationship with McLaren went south, and so that didn't happen. And so they were kind of left with a choice between Colapinto and a guy called Paul Aaron, who's their other reserve driver, an Estonian driver who was quick in F2, who apparently has looked good in testing, but he doesn't have Colapinto's Latin American financial backing. And given Alpine are in a kind of restructuring process, they're last in the Constructors' Championship this year. They've not developed this year's car with a hope that when they switch to the 2026 regulations, they'll be more competitive. They'll have a Mercedes engine next year rather than the in-house Renault engine, which program has been abandoned by the former Renault CEO, who's now left the company, Luca Di Maio, who has been responsible fundamentally for the decline of Alpine over the last few years, because he's been in charge of Renault and he's put in place all the managers who've messed things up so badly. So they're in a difficult place. So in a way, it was just like, well, let's just sign this guy. He's got some cash. We'll get into 26, see where we are. We'll re-enter the driver market next year when we're a bit more stable, a bit more settled. They've got Steve Nielsen in there now as managing director, running the team on a day-to-day basis. They'll be in a much better place by sort of April, May next year to come back into the driver market with a sort of fresh set of eyes and start again for 27, really.
Yeah. With that confirmation, though, I believe that just leaves the Red Bull and Racing Bulls scenario to play itself out. So obviously Verstappen very much staying where he is, even though that was questioned earlier on in the year. But who will line up alongside him, and then who will line up in those Racing Bulls seats currently occupied by Liam Lawson and Isaac Hadjar? Right, are we going, by the way, Isaac? Are we going Isaac or Isaac? You're an Isaac man.
I'm an Isaac because I speak some French, and that's why. But,
okay. Oh God.
And it is Isaac in French.
I know it's Isaac, but he said, "Call me Isaac." So I was like, "Okay."
It's like the Leclerc conversation.
Yeah, it is.
He says, you can call him Charles Leclerc, which is how you say it in French, or you can call him Charles Leclerc, which is the English pronunciation. He just says he doesn't care.
Well, maybe if we say Charles Leclerc, so maybe we should say Isaac, because if we're doing Charles Leclerc, we should probably do Isaac.
I think Isaac is his name. Yeah.
We're laying down that marker there.
I mean, look, it's a grey area because we say Max Verstappen, but if you say Verstappen in Dutch, it doesn't sound quite the same. And it was the same with Kevin Magnussen. I once asked him, how do I say Magnussen?
How do you say Magnussen?
In Danish, I don't know. He said something, I couldn't repeat it.
You nodded and walked away.
Yes, exactly.
Well, there was always, wasn't there some debate over Vettel as well, with Vettel? And
yeah, Crofty likes Vettel, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. But, likes a bit of the F.
So yes, and so we're breaking our own rules there, aren't we?
We are. We're very hypocritical there, but we're going to go with Isaac and roll with it. 33 minutes and 14 seconds remain of free practice one. Russell tops the session ahead of Verstappen. Then it's Sainz, Leclerc and Hamilton the top 5. Gasly's in 6th ahead of Lawson. Piastri 8th. Antonelli and Norris the top 10. Both McLarens back out on the track now. Hadjar, Behrman, Bortoletto, Albon and Alonso the top 15. With Hülkenberg, Ocon, Stroll, Colapinto and Tsunoda after that crash still yet to appear from the pit lane, 20th and last.
And of course on the pronunciation saga, you've got Pierre, as anyone who's watched Drive to Survive will know that it's Pierre Gasly, as Daniel Ricciardo used to say, as opposed to we say Gasly. In French they will pronounce the second syllable more than the first, but anyway.
Well, should we be saying Lance Strolovich technically?
Yes, technically, yes, it's in his passport, isn't it? But I think we have to.
I think if you start getting into passports, then we're in other territory. Carlos Sainz, I think, has one of the longest names going.
Names,
yeah.
It's Fernando Alonso Diaz, technically, and etc. Yeah.
We should do one weekend entirely where we use their full passport names and see if anyone notices.
I think Max's middle name's Emilia after the Monza race.
Maximilian Verstappen.
Yeah.
It is Maximilian Verstappen.
I found that out last week.
After the Monza race. After something.
Yeah.
So on Sainz, it's Carlos Sainz Vasquez de Castro.
De Castro would have been a cool last name. De Castro down the inside. That sounds like almost like an evil villain character, doesn't it? We get sidetracked, don't we? By the way, we were talking about...
That's what P1's for.
I know it is what P1's for. Well, it depends, doesn't it? But I feel like we should sort of see off... We've spoken about the championship. By the way, if you want to have a full-on preview, we'll be on 5 Live tonight at 9 o'clock with us 3 and Jenny Gow as well, previewing the weekend in its entirety. We'll also be hearing from some of the drivers as well. So we've got this great title fight up at the front. I mean, George Russell is still technically, mathematically in contention, but I don't think it's going to happen for him. He's down in 4th. Charles Leclerc is the top 5. over in the constructors, McLaren obviously have wrapped up things well in advance in Singapore. Ferrari, though, they sit second. They are 1 point ahead of Mercedes in third, who themselves are only 9 points ahead of Red Bull in fourth.
You should probably
I was going to say, of the team Max Verstappen. Well, you just think, imagine if they had not even an equivalent, but just someone who was just a little bit behind Verstappen. I mean, I haven't done the maths, but technically, could they not still be challenging McLaren for the constructors' title if they had someone who was just coming third behind Max Verstappen's win? So, as we get a little bit of traffic for Hajar, let's hear from him.
Is Piastri blind or what? What was that?
I don't think Piastri was looking in his mirrors. That's on the approach to the right hand of the horseshoe section at turn 6. Hajar was on a quick lap and being squeezed to the left-hand side by a rather lazily listing Oscar Piastri, and Isaac Hajar was not too happy with that one. Back to this constructors' fight. I mean, second place. I know it's not for the championship win, Abby, and it is the constructors, but that is a hell of a fight, and one that will mean a lot, especially for, if Ferrari can finish second. Will that be some kind of damage limitation, considering where they were at the end of last year?
Yeah, the fight for P2 and the constructors is incredibly close. And I think Ferrari, they've not really had any crazy results. I think they've barely been on the podium this year. They've just always been in the top 10, really, with both drivers there. They're always there and scoring, whereas the likes of Mercedes, they've just got George, Kimi's there or thereabouts, but struggling a bit more than George is. And then Red Bull, as you say, is just a one-man team, really, with Max Verstappen scoring 92% of their points so far.
Oh, she's done her prep. She's rolled out the stats.
But when you look at that, you've got... It does really highlight the jeopardy that Yuki is in. Of course, he hasn't done the full season with Red Bull, but I mean, Sergio, as we know, last year lost his seat and he scored 25% of the points for the team. Where, I mean, you can say that arguably it was a more competitive car, so they were at the front more and he had more opportunity to score points, and you can get into that argument and whole debate, but it does really just go to show how much behind Yuki has been, and for sure Red Bull would be P2 quite comfortably in the constructors if it wasn't for being a one-man team essentially, and yeah, it just makes you wonder what could have been. Of course, I don't know if they would still have the legs on McLaren. I think McLaren have really, especially the first half of the year before Red Bull's upgrades, been in a league of their own, but it's who knows.
I think McLaren would still have an advantage there, but they need a year. I mean, Sergio Perez finished second in the Drivers' Championship in 2023. They need that every time, really, and then they're golden. But for Red Bull, the fact that they're still actually not out of the fight for second yet is mightily impressive, all thanks to Max Verstappen, which we're getting a replay of at the moment. Again, heading down to the Desina del Lago complex, turns in, but this time gets a huge snap on the rear and has to abort ship, Abby. Yeah,
on the downshifts there, and an initial turn in just didn't have the support of the rear, and had a massive on the lock stops on the entry of T4. It seems to be proving rather difficult as we now go on board with George Russell, looking like he's going to get a little bit of traffic. Yeah, the Red Bull on the inside going into T6, looking like they're having a race, really. Just got to save that for tomorrow.
Well, this is the thing, this is the only practice session our 20 drivers will get before we go sprint qualifying, which will be on Sports Extra this evening. Lights out, qualifying, the green light will come on at 6:30 this evening. So that's the battle happening for second, by the way. Williams look like they've rather cemented 5th place in the constructors, and then my personal favourite battle is always the battle for 6th place, which is looking good. Okay, it's not the headline grabber, but it's looking good. Racing Bulls are currently winning that fight, but they've had a bit of a poor run recently, and they are only 3 points ahead of Aston Martin, who are only 7 points ahead of Haas, who are only 2 points ahead of Sauber. So, okay, I know it's not headline grabbing, Abby, but that is literally worth tens of millions of dollars for these teams at the back.
There is a lot of pressure on the drivers for that midfield battle. As you say, it is a large amount of investment, and they're all fighting for millions and millions of pounds and dollars, whatever currency you want to use. It's really vital that they all make a step up. And the likes of Haas, who are still really close, you'd think it will be Esteban that's kind of keeping the team in the fight, but it's actually been Ollie Behrman that's been getting the results recently. I don't think I mean, it's been quite a couple of race weekends since Esteban's actually outperformed Ollie Behrman, so you wouldn't really expect that from a rookie. So I think that goes to show how good of a job Ollie is doing. But also, if Esteban wants to, keep his run in Formula 1 going and keep the team kind of happy, he needs to up his game a little bit. We always talk about what's going on higher up the field in the top level teams, but yeah, this inter-team battle between these two is quite interesting as we go on board with Lando Norris getting traffic.
Yeah, he's just blocking me. I'm on a push lap.
Yeah, we're on it.
That's Lando Norris. I think he's referring to the Alpine in front of him, which is Pierre Gasly coming into that horseshoe section.
I think the problem we're coming on now is some drivers are doing consecutive push laps, whereas some are still doing kind of performance one lap push laps, and it's all getting a bit messy with run plans and how in sync they are.
Tsunoda looks like he is back out on the track. Verstappen is heading down to Desida del Lago at the moment, but Tsunoda losing a huge chunk of valuable track time ahead of sprint qualifying.
Yeah, we just had a message on the Red Bull media chat, by the way, about that. They say that he had damage to both the rear and front wings of his car. We know about the front wing, we didn't know about the rear wing, but it's all now fixed, and as you say, Harry, he's about to roll out and trying to make up for lost time.
Yeah, he's got 24 minutes to try and get to grips with this circuit. He's come out on the soft tyre, if the timing screens are to be believed, which they aren't always, Abby.
When you've got so much pressure riding on your seat for next year, and if you're going to continue with Red Bull, whether that decision's been made behind the scenes or not yet, you really don't want to be doing that on a weekend like this, where you have literally free practice one to get all your knowledge in, get your references, get all the data for the team, and to put it in the wall, although not massively hard, but enough to make him lose half of his practice running for this session. And if there's any other underlying issues, who knows, as there was a bit of a tap to the rear. It's just really silly. I mean, in T4, from what I've seen so far, Red Bull are taking the most margin on the curbs. Maybe they've been ordered to do so to, as we discussed earlier, for the plank wear and to see how it performs, but it's just unnecessary risks.
Well, this is the sound of Yuki Tsunoda. He is out on the softs as he brakes and heads downhill into the Senna S's, carves through the left-hander of turn 3, the Curva de Sol. Turn 6 incident involving Verstappen and Russell that's been noted for impeding, but it's practice, so they usually get away with that. Okay, into the braking zone for the left-hander of turn 4, the beginning of Desida del Lago. Takes a more cautious berth to the outside curb as he now runs down the back of the pit lane and into the Ferradura through the right-hander, the horseshoe section off camber, onto the brakes, downhill again through the right-hander as he then rises over the crest before he plunges back downhill through the left-hander of turn 9. Sun shines out over Interlagos today with some white clouds in the air. No threat of rain at the moment. That's to come tomorrow as he now heads uphill out of turns 10 through the left-hander of 11 through Magulio, then uphill slightly onto the brakes through the left-hander of Jung Sao, and then it is just a run uphill. You're heading uphill at a gradient of about 10% before you then slightly arc to the left. The DRS line comes, the pit lane entry is to his left. He carries on straight to the line, and his first lap out of the pits on the soft tyre puts Tsunoda up into 13th place.
I just absolutely love this circuit. I think it's incredible, and seeing the onboards where it's the elevation change and how pinpoint you have to be in that middle sector. The steering wheel is never straight. They're always constantly working for a solid 30 seconds straight, and the amount of load that goes on the tyre, it's a really hard race to manage for sure with the tyre and the strategy for the team, and I just absolutely love it. And in the wet around here, that middle sector, you're never even full throttle, I don't think, from the onboards that I've seen. They're always feathering the throttle just as you're on so much load. And it's particularly hard in the braking, because when you're braking whilst turning, it's really prone to lockups. So the risk reward here is quite fun to watch.
Apparently you're only at full throttle for about 60% of a lap around Interlagos. It's about 4.3 kilometres, just above that, 2.67 miles, 15 turns, 10 that go to the left, 5 that go to the right. You're changing gears about 42 times per lap, reaching speeds of over 330 kilometres per hour. And that will be felt not only in the cockpit, but for Gabriel Bortoleto, who heads downhill through the Senna S's in his fluoro green Sauber off the back of nicking a point in Mexico. Is the Brazilian with the weight of a nation on his shoulders, and the TV director at Formula One, I think, feeling particularly harsh as he cuts from Bortoleto to Aston Martin reserve driver Felipe Drugovich, the man and the Brazilian driver who won Formula 2 just a couple of seasons ago, was waiting for a chance, a possible opportunity to get into Formula One. Lots of free practice outing, TPC testing, but it is not to be, and I think that Formula One dream has faded away for Felipe Drugovich, and he looks set to embark on the Formula E life, I believe. Abby, you'll know a bit more about that.
Yeah, I was about to say he's just signed and doing a full season in Formula E. He's done some guest appearances last season. Of course, their season goes across 2 years, so it's a bit different. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to see him continuing, but it's also a shame to see that F1 dream go for him. Of course, they've got the first round of Formula E actually in Sao Paulo, so a home race to begin is quite exciting for him, actually.
It really is. Actually, so, okay, slight sidebar with 20 minutes to go. Formula E, I've got proximity radio chat. Is that a thing?
I know exactly what you've seen. No, it's not a thing. It was an accident. It was a happy accident made for a good laugh, I think.
That would have been, because that's one of the things that I think Alex Albon has brought up about what would you know, we always have these conversations, don't we? What would you change about Formula One? What would you add in? I think he said team radio proximity chat. If you're if you're near the driver, you can talk to them on the radio and vice versa.
Carnage. Imagine you've crashed with a driver and you're like, mate, what were you doing? Like, what was that? And you're just like yelling at each other on the radio about it.
when are you stopping for the wets or whatever?
yeah, well, that was a bit of a bad line, mate. Sort it out.
I think that would be absolute box office, but we're way away from that at the moment, but I believe there are some talks about possible changes for next year to some of the smaller elements of racing.
Imagine that between Fernando and Gabriele. Do you think Fernando would be giving advice on the radio, or do you think he'd be psyching him out?
No, I think Alonso has already denied Bortoleto a few times this year, I think, where he could have been a bit nicer, and I think he has on purpose almost. You probably overcompensate, really, don't you, when you've got a good relationship. But yeah, our producers just said maybe teammates should have the proximity chat, but no one else.
I don't know. I would love to just have Max Verstappen behind someone and just singing Max just as he's like about to overtake. That would be amazing.
Ultimate mind games.
Yeah.
Can you just give us another rendition of that song?
No, I'm not. Never again.
The Max Verstappen theme tune that never goes away. Right, Russell still fastest out there with 18 minutes and 14, 13, 12 seconds on the clock. Verstappen behind him, both on the hards. The gap is about just over a tenth and a half. Then it is Oscar Piastri in third, who's just come into the pits. Did he have an issue going into the Senna S's? Takes the first of them, comes out of the bottom. Does he have a bit of a wobble? Gets on the curb, and yes, he does. Picks up a bit of dirt and then has a snap on the rear. And a bit of a slide. Controls it, but it would have cost him a bit of time.
Yeah, just took a bit too much curb on the exit, a bit too much margin, asking for probably a bit more minimum around turn 2 than was possible, and then actually went away from the curb. And I think there you want to stay as close as you can to the white line and hug it, and as soon as you get a bit offline, a bit off the rubber, just lost a little bit of grip and yeah, had that moment. And there, especially as I said about the middle sector, turn 3 is also the same, where you're feathering the throttle and you're just waiting for it to bite until you can go full beans. It's a really tough circuit for that, and you have to manage that rear axle a lot.
Well, he has aborted that lap and come into the pit lane as Oscar Piastri. Currently sits third, 2/10 adrift from Russell. Sainz in the Williams is fourth. Leclerc and Hamilton fifth and sixth, with Gasly, Lawson, Antonelli and Tsunoda out there on the softs, improving his lap time steadily, but is currently 10th ahead of Norris. Then it's Hadjar, Behrman, Bortoleto, Albon the top 15, with Alonso, Hülkenberg, Ocon, Stroll and Colapinto, the 20 drivers that make up the field, with just over a quarter of an hour before we get the checkered flag on this one, and we'll go qualifying for the sprint. So George Russell looking pretty strong in these early stages, Abby?
Yeah, I was about to say, it looks like Mercedes are liking the circuit here so far. I mean, going into the weekend, I feel like it is a track that has suited them for sure, and you'd expect them to be fighting up there. And I mean, Kimi struggling a bit more than George, but I wouldn't be surprised if we do see Mercedes on the podium this weekend.
Well, George Russell is a winner here. Took his maiden win back in 2022 and will be making his 90th Grand Prix start for Mercedes. I mean, we've said it already. I don't know how you felt about his season so far, Abby, but I've been so impressed by George Russell this year. I think it's probably one of his best seasons to date.
I wouldn't argue with that at all. I think it is his best season to date, and he's really stepped up after Lewis has left. Obviously, he was always in Lewis's shadow a little bit, and it's hard when you've got a 7-time world champion as your teammate. It's hard to come up against someone like that, but he's really shown Toto that he can be a team leader, and he makes decisions for himself. And you hear them fiery team radios, which are questioning, are we doing the right thing? Actually, no, I want to do this. And it takes a lot of time to have that amount of confidence and to make them decisions. They're the kind of team radios that you won't hear on Antonelli's side of the garage just yet, because he doesn't have enough experience. He's not done enough races and gone through enough of them scenarios to know exactly what he wants and what strategy he wants to be on, and how it would need to alter if something in the race is to change. He'll be getting better and better as it goes on, as all the rookies will, but it's just not something you get in your first year.
No, and then added to the mix though, second season, and the same for everybody though, isn't it? But brand new regulations, different cars, a lot to get to grips with for 2026, as we're sort of getting to the end of this era of Formula One, really. Longest season ever, with 24 races as we had last year, but before you know it, in the blink of an eye, you're getting into the final quarter. It was only, I still feel like I remember Melbourne, not too long ago, but yeah, it was all the way back in March.
I'm actually really excited for the regulation change as well, because we've had a lot of rookies come in this year, and it's been the hardest year, I would argue, to come into Formula One, as everyone's been driving this generation of car for a while now. They're at the end of the development, so it's as close as it's ever going to get in this stage of this regulation of cars. So now they're all going into a new regulation. It's a new driving style. They're all going to have to find it and change their approach a little bit. Everything's going to be very different, and it gives the rookies a chance to try and get one up on their more experienced counterparts.
Final stages of this one and only practice session here in Sao Paulo at the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache. Alex Albon is the sound you're hearing right now on board. Here's Williams, fastest of anybody in the first sector. He is stuck on the medium tyre. So too has Stroll, who has gone second fastest in the Aston Martin. Up the hill from Jungsao we ride with the Thai driver, who has had a bit of a rough run of things recently. He's on a 4 Grand Prix no point scoring streak at the moment, which he'll be very much wanting to turn around this weekend. And he goes fastest with a 1:11.004 on that medium tyre. Probably worth saying, RE the tyres, Pirelli have gone a step harder than last year. It's actually the same that we used in 2023. So something to keep an eye on. So the C2 is the hard, the C3 is the medium, with the C4 soft. And because it's a sprint weekend, slightly different allocation of tyres, so this could be handy. Two sets of wets, which we never use, 5 sets of intermediate tyres for the weekend, and there are rumblings that rain might well be on the way sooner than we think.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the Williams in the top 6 this weekend. I think they're on a good kind of trajectory. They've had a really good year so far, especially from previous years. And Alex Albon last year here was actually having a really good run. He was really strong. It was a track that suited him, as Carlos Sainz has actually just gone to the top of the timesheets with a 1:10.8. But this seems to be a track that Alex really gets on with, and as we've just seen, Carlos as well. And I think it's another opportunity for them to score some points. Last year they just had a bit of bad luck, obviously, having both of them DNF, have their own incidents, which Alex has alluded that there was actually a few external factors which caused his crash.
Oh my God, what is he doing?
No love lost between Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda was listing to the left on the pit exit as Lawson was approaching at quite high speed, but Lawson being shown blue flags there, being made aware that there was a car on the track. So a little bit unnecessary, I think, from either side on that one.
Yeah, as we're actually seeing going into turn 6, 2 cars, 2 abreast, so that always makes me cringe after seeing the close call earlier in the session. But yeah, no impeding here as we're going on board with on helicam with Franco Colapinto going into the middle sector. Got to put it all together. He's currently in 20th place, quite far adrift, 7/10 adrift to his teammates, so a lot of time to make up.
Yeah, lap time's improving all the time. The track evolving as well. This roller coaster really of cambered corners and blind crests. It's short, it's intense, requires a huge amount of commitment. It's twisty, it's bumpy, and it's very much rhythm that you need to find. And once you get into a good rhythm, well, I feel like that's half the battle cracked, really, as Colapinto comes across the line and goes 10th fastest. Meanwhile, Oscar Piastri has put on the medium tyre and has gone fastest of anybody in the first sector, quicker than teammate Lando Norris, who's also out there on the medium. So here we go. We'll get a little bit of a comparison here. Always tricky to tell the full readout from a practice session, but as it's the one and only, the stakes are higher. Piastri pushing now through the left-hander of turn 11, Maguglio, as he plunges downhill and then starts to climb back up through Zhengzhou, the left-hander, and rise over the crest and down that start-finish straight, which isn't really straight, slightly curves to the left, and just a couple of metres left to run for the Australian. The DRS, the rear wing, flies open and he goes 6/10 clear at the top of the field with a 1:10.193. What does Lando Norris have to offer on this occasion? He's personal best, but he hasn't set a fastest sector overall, and he's over 2.5 tenths adrift of teammate Piastri.
Yeah, that was a pretty mighty lap from Oscar there. I mean, to be that margin ahead on the first lap of that medium, he's done a brilliant job. And if the session ends as it is, of course they're probably going to do a few more laps, but Lando, he needs to make sure going into quali he doesn't go in with that mindset of that this defines the whole weekend, and I think sometimes as a driver it could be really easy to get into that and say, they were quicker in practice, that means, they've just got the edge on me this weekend. He needs to try and make sure he, after this session, if it stays like this, that is, if he doesn't keep improving, that he goes in with the confidence he can keep improving, as Hulkenberg actually goes into third place.
Yeah, he's half a second down though, although Nico Hulkenberg likes it around here. Rewind to 2010 in his rookie year for Williams, stuck it on pole position. He could have won the 2012 Grand Prix, Nico Hulkenberg. I think for Force India, victory slipping through his fingers with a clash with Lewis Hamilton going into the Senna S's. So Hulkenberg quite likes it around Sao Paulo.
Didn't he give Haas their first pole position around here as well?
That was Magnussen. That was Kevin But that was when we had a slightly different sprint format, and so it's really annoying for the stats. But I'm calling it a pole either way, because the scenes were sensational for Kevin Magnussen and Haas. It was like they'd won the race already, and I don't think there was no one unhappy with that result. I mean,
the videos in the garage afterwards where he's like smacking the car and he's trying not to hit his head on all the computers above him. It was very spectacular.
Yeah, still yet to get a podium though in their entire career are the Haas team. Came close with Behrman last time out, but just missed it right at the end. But it was 4th place, and it was a worthy drive for Oliver Behrman, whose star continues to rise. And it's been an interesting journey for all the rookies, actually. We're just watching Hadjar now. He locked up right in the middle sector, threw away a chunk of lap time there. He still goes 6th fastest, so that's impressive from Hadjar, who has been saying that Racing Bull's car is good in qualifying, but they're struggling in race trim at the moment. So they're trying to dial that out. They've got the advantage, as we were mentioning, of sitting pretty in that battle for 6th, but all it takes is for another big result, like a Haas getting 4th or a Sauber getting a podium, and suddenly your fortunes change.
As we've also just seen George Russell go into the 2nd sector on a push lap and bail out of it as he got a bit of oversteer going into turn 6, so deciding I'm gonna wait this one out, save the tyres for another day and go again. This
is the sound of Oliver Behrman, the 20-year-old who gets 2 penalty points knocked off his licence this weekend, so he goes down to 8 penalty points now, so breathes a little bit of relief, does Behrman, as he makes his way around Jung Sao, but the car looks a little heavy through the corner, lost a bit of time in the middle sector, and currently 13th. He's on that medium tyre. Let's see where this places Behrman. Will he get a little bit of slipstream from the car ahead of him? He does. Boosts him up just 1 position though into 12th, but I think there's more time to find there.
Yeah, there was a few mistakes kind of riddled throughout his lap there, and not quite 100% confident in the car in turn 12 either, so a little bit more to find for the rookie, but I'm sure he can do the job, as he's done such a brilliant job so far this season.
Hulkenberg continues on another lap. Antonelli as well out there, lost time in the middle sector. Hulkenberg personal best through the middle sector. He's half a second adrift at the moment in 3rd. Let's see where this gets him. He finds a 10th overall and cements 3rd place at the moment. But we've yet to see really the 2 Ferraris. They have they're out there at the moment, but they are on a hard tyre, I believe, so which would be interesting. They think they want to go and try out the medium, but I've sort of lost trust in my timing screen at the moment, so we'll see once we get a glimpse of the Ferrari drivers. But they're down in 18th and 19th, along with Max Verstappen, who's actually still in the pit lane, down in 17th. So a few cars yet to show what they've truly got, but just over 5 minutes left of this session. Fernando Alonso is the next. He's currently up in 5th, so good run last time out for Alonso, and he's on a personal best through the 1st sector, through the middle sector, arcs his way round the final double left-handers that make up the start-finish straight and finds time. He's 4th fastest is Fernando Alonso, with the most podiums of anyone at the Brazilian Grand Prix, 9 times a podium sitter, but yet to win it, unbelievably.
Yeah, no, it's you would think with all the experience he'd have won this race, so it's probably one that he wants to add to his accolade as well, because this is such an iconic circuit to race around. Obviously the fans, the home crowd, as Bortoletto goes across the line and goes up to P5, so not too far off of his teammate Nico Hulkenberg, only 0.02 off of Nico, so he's done a really good job there, I think, for his first few hot laps around this circuit, his first FP1 session around here. Not a bad showing from Gabriel.
Not at all. 2nd lap on the medium tyre for Lando Norris. Looks like he's found a bit of time, but is it enough to topple his teammate Oscar Piastri, fastest of anybody in the final sector? But it's still not enough. 2.5 tenths adrift from Piastri after his 2nd run for Lando Norris on that medium tyre, as we get a look as Max Verstappen heads into the Senna S's on the soft tyre. So we're going to see what he's got on the quickest rubber, the red walled rubber, as he heads down the Reto Aposta.
Going down to T4, they've made a meal of this corner so far, as there's a few cars on the inside but not getting in the way too much. Made a nice tidy line of T4, not going too wide as we've seen the Red Bulls do previously. Now going into T6, it's a big combination. It's really easy to lock up the front right, but there's also quite a nice positive camber, so it hooks up. It's like a little railway track, and it brings you around this middle sector. It's all positively cambered, and you can really lean on the car because of that. Again, now going into T10, it is a lot to ask of the car. The tyres are screaming at this point, trying to overheat, and you've got to really manage that now going into T12, where we've seen the Haas get a bit unstuck, as Max has bailed out the lap actually because of a bit of traffic ahead, which is unfortunate, as he was on a personal best sector 1 and 2.
Yeah, he's got Lawson and Piastri ahead of him, and I think he's going to come back into the pits. He does. Interesting though, it's only Red Bull, I think, are the only ones who've stuck on the soft tyre this session. So interesting to note. Also
interesting that he was about half a second down on Piastri's time by the time he got to the final corner there onto the pit straight, despite being on the soft tyres rather than the mediums that the McLarens were on. Of course, we don't know fuel loads or engine modes or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's Oscar Piastri who has the fastest time at the moment, ahead of his teammate Lando Norris. And we haven't been saying that too often so far in the last couple of races, but there's still plenty to be decided. Max Verstappen, though, is yet to show his full pace, and we haven't seen either the two Ferraris. Could they try and get into the battle? We'll see. Brazilian hopes all lie on Gabriel Bortoleto, and so far so good. He's fifth in his Sauber. It's like they come to us when Andrew Benson speaks, and they just want him to shut up and get interrupted. Our little 5 Live Sport update there. Had you finished your point, or would you like to?
Pretty much.
Yeah, we had. Yeah. So just checking. Right, we're at just a minute and 24 seconds left. Antonelli is on the medium tyre. Everybody's out there actually, except for Fernando Alonso, who has come into the pits. And yes, it's for the time being. But it's Piastri, Norris, Hülkenberg, Alonso, Bortoleto, the top 5. Russell, Sainz, Lawson, Albon, Hadjar. The top 10 with Ocon, Gasly, Behrman, Stroll, Antonelli. 15th at the moment and 6/10 adrift as he makes his way up from turn 12 to complete this lap in his Mercedes. Colapinto 16th, Verstappen 17th, is back out there now, having ditched the softs for the hards. Then it's Leclerc and Hamilton, who were just out there focusing on the hard tyre by the looks of things, and Tsunoda is 20th and last, and very much on the back foot after his crash earlier on in the session. I'll tell you the other thing, just coming back to our Williams chat. You know, whilst, okay, Albon's had a few struggles recently, but the team overall has looked impressive and really does seem like they've got great foundations now to kickstart this new era and try and get, you know, what James Vowles and the whole team want is to move that team back to the front. Feels like Carlos Sainz now is finally up to speed and embedded within his new team.
Yeah, I mean, I think the team as a whole with James Vowles kind of heading it is, as we see, actually a yellow flag. Maybe, no, it's gone away now. The timing screen's lying to us. But what James Vowles is doing is really turn the team around, and he's really managed to get a lot of performance out of them. I think he brings the team all together, and it's really great to see how they've turned it around, because we've seen they've gone through a lot of low points the past couple of years, and it's been a while for them to try and get back on track. So with them and the really strong lineup they've got, I almost compare it to what McLaren have. They've got 2 top drivers. They've got 2 number 1 drivers in Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon that have got lots of years of experience they can bring to the table to help bring that team forward and get it out of that midfield and try and bring it into that equation and that conversation of they're getting closer and closer back into that top 5, top 4 kind of conversation.
Yeah, certainly are. Carlos Sainz finishing in 8th as Lando Norris right at the very end as the clock counts down to 0. Pips his teammate Oscar Piastri, but there is nothing separating them. 23 thousandths of a second. That's what we want, isn't it? At the end of the first and only practice session, the 2 drivers that are split by 1 point in the championship, driving for the same team, end FP1 in 1 and 2 with nothing between them. Lando Norris fastest ahead of Piastri, Hülkenberg 3rd, Alonso 4th, Gabriel Bortoleto giving the Brazilian fans something to cheer about in 5th. As we're just getting a look at something that happened to Hamilton in the middle sector of the lap. He ended the session down in 19th, and he had a big spin. You were right about the yellow flag, Abby, and it was out for Lewis Hamilton, who came into Magulio, the left-hander that brings you down towards Jungsao, and the rear of that Ferrari just completely stepping out on him, and a couple of was it a full 360 and then 180, something like that from the Ferrari driver.
Well, he was pointing in the right direction in the end, but it just looks like it, as we were saying earlier, the rears are overheating at this point, and T11, although it's a flat-out corner in these cars, you're still just on the edge of that.
Rear hit the floor.
And there we go. It was the Ferrari bottoming out that caught him by surprise. But you could see just before it initially was on the edge. The rear was coming round and then hit the floor, and he just became a passenger and had nowhere to go really. So maybe a little bit of a line change for him in the future, or maybe he needs to say, look, we need to run it a bit higher.
Hamilton will be hoping to put on a good show this weekend. Brazil is basically a second home for him. They made him an honorary citizen back in 2022. But at the end of that session then, it's Norris, Piastri, And plucky old Nico Hulkenberg in the Sauber up in third, ahead of Fernando Alonso. Bortoletto in 5th. Russell, Gasly with a even surprising to him competitive session up in 7th, ahead of Sainz. Hadjar and Antonelli were the top 10. Then it's Lawson, Albon, the two Hasses of Ocon and Behrman, with Stroll rounding out the top 15. Colapinto with a 2026 driver's contract in his back pocket secured, finishes 16th, ahead of Max Verstappen. So we've not seen really a flying lap from Max Verstappen outside of the hard tyres. So that's going to be interesting going into sprint quali. The two Ferraris look like they had different focuses for this weekend, for this session at least. Leclerc 18th, Hamilton 19th, and Tsunoda after that early crash in this session, trying to recover but ending 20th and last on the back foot. Right, we are going to go off and have a little break now, and then we'll be back for sprint qualifying, which will be on Sports Extra. We'll be on air about 6:25 in the evening, ahead of the green light coming on at the end of the pit lane for 6:30. Do join us for it. Thank you very much, Andrew Benson. Thank you very much, Abby Pulling. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live.